You're tuning in to Why We're Here, honest conversations about companies worth joining, with Amit Matani, CEO of Wellfound.
Hey everybody, I'm here with Jacob Peters, the co-founder and CEO of Superpower. Thanks for joining us, Jacob.
Excited to be here.
So tell me a little bit about what Superpower does.
So Superpower does everything that mainstream medicine falls short on today. And the business was inspired by the work of high-end concierge physicians, so doctors who charge hundreds of thousands of dollars for their care, test everything in your body, pair you with a full-time team, and leave no stone unturned to help you become the healthiest, longest living version of yourselves. And we basically use technology to democratize that. So we've built the high-end clinic as a software product and made it as easy as possible to see everything that's happening in your body, take control of your health, and then get access to all the tools you need to feel like your best self. So it's basically high-end concierge medicine at like a super accessible price.
Can you explain to me like where that came from? Did you guys have experience with concierge medicine? Did you see it out there? Like, tell me a little bit more about the founding story.
Yeah, so the company was born out of a traumatic personal health experience. And both of my co-founders have also had their own respective challenges and run-ins with the healthcare system, as have many of the members of our founding team. So it's a story that's all too common really across the US populace and people in the world, which is that healthcare and mainstream health has failed a lot of folks. So in my case, 3.5 years ago, I had just come off the back of building my first company, which was a multi-$100 million software business in my early 20s. And I made the mistake that I think all too many entrepreneurial and ambitious people do, which is put the pursuit of success and impact and whatever you're trying to birth into the world ahead of your health foundation. So I wasn't sleeping right, wasn't eating right, wasn't taking care of myself. I had a lot of weird symptoms under the hood. So it's kind of like this iceberg, where on the top, it looked like everything in life was successful going up and to the right, but beneath the surface, there was problems brewing that I was ignoring. And I ended up getting diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. So Crohn's disease, for those who are familiar with it. And it's basically when your immune system attacks your own stomach. So I ended up in the hospital for many months dealing with a Crohn's disease flare. And these things are often very complicated as far as their cause. It's a combination generally of some genetic predispositions and then the perfect environmental storm of triggers that all come together to create this illness and dysfunction in the body where the immune system literally attacks your own organs. And I was stuck in the hospital for many months, had to get a number of surgeries, was really only given medications that I was told to take for life or surgery as options, which is indicative of some of the challenges in healthcare where 85% of health system revenue comes from those two sources. So there's this economic incentive to basically ignore the underlying root cause of disease in a lot of cases and focus on the interventions that are going to make the health system the most money and the biggest monetization. So that happened in my case where I was told to medicate for life and had to get a number of surgeries, almost lost my life. And the only saving grace was after I got out of the hospital, I got connected to a handful of high-end concierge physicians just through the tech network. So I went viral on Twitter and got connected to a few doctors who, between us work with different members of the tech billionaire class that we probably, all know and revere. And you realize there's a better way. And then if you have money and you're in the know, healthcare is not a problem. It's a solved problem. And the story of technology and the inevitable arc of technological innovation is such that it often democratizes for the many what was once only available for the few. Back pre-2010 and Travis building Uber, only really the top 1% had private drivers. Right. Now everyone pretty much has a private driver at their fingertips that they can call thanks to the democratization of that service. And the same thing is about to happen in high-end concierge medicine, and Superpower is really leading the vanguard right now with this.
Can you tell me a little bit? So this is really interesting to me because has something changed in terms of technology or regulation that you guys are able to actually build this now? Given, it sounds like a really awesome idea, but it sounds like something that probably would have been done before. Has something changed that now it can be done?
They had to spend hundreds of millions of dollars building tools and custom EMRs, and which is the kind of back layer that runs a healthcare business, a healthcare services org. They had to spend hundreds of millions of dollars building these tools from scratch and maintaining those tools. And that's really costly and really expensive. A lot of that can now be built for only a few million in 1/10 the time with a lot less maintenance because they exist as APIs. So there's a beautiful why now moment for something like Superpower to exist. So we have feels like limitless Lego blocks to play with on the back
That's
end
cool.
to build this experience. The second is the rise of large language models. And now for the very first time, the computation that exists in healthcare can be done as an automated product. So if you really think about what a doctor's doing when you go to a healthcare provider, they're basically computing between databases, because you have a database of everything that the doctor sees in front of them about the patient, the database of everything the doctor knows about medicine, and then the database of all the interventions, which are mainly pharmaceuticals and surgery, as we talked about, that are available to intervene. And the doctor's sort of just connecting the dots between these three databases. But that is an obvious informatics problem. Language models are infinitely better than humans at being able to compute between these types of databases. So what this means is we can actually scale the minds and the brains and the models of a lot of these high-end doctors that spend a lot of time with you for zero to low marginal cost given LLM. So that's the other big why now moment. I think the third is just like the consumer sentiment. Like just like how Robinhood kind of came onto the scene about a decade ago, post 2008, when people were feeling super financially disenfranchised, and they're like, "Hey, here's a financial empowerment tool to take your finances into your own hands." There's the same type of sentiment brewing in healthcare. People are frustrated. It's tragic, but we all saw what happened with the United CEO murder. Like, that's indicative of just how people feel right now about the challenges in healthcare. Like, it's not right that you can learn more scrolling 15 minutes of your TikTok feed, about hearing about the future of medicine or gut health or sleep or hormones than you can from your primary care doctor. And you ask them and they kind of look at you funny. So there's a big problem, and consumers are aware of the gap and aware of some of the challenges. So there's basically a great time in a vacuum in the market for to be able to come in and stand as like that antithesis to brokenness. And that's what we're doing with Superpower.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's funny. Like, I have 2 kids, and we take them to their checkups and everything else, and it's been pretty interesting because you get the blood report directly from the hospital before you talk to the doctor. And now I pop that into ChatGPT and I get all the recommendations before I even talk to the doctor. It's wild. It's crazy how much things have changed. Tell me a little bit about what your vision for the company over the next few years are, and like, what are the big milestones that you guys need to hit or feel like you need to hit over next year or so.
Yeah, so we're on a path to 100,000 users. Except awesome. Some people in healthcare call them patients. We actually call them members. And the mantra is become a member so you don't have to become the patient, since we sort of see ourselves as the healthcare system before the healthcare system. So doing all the things to help you take control of your health to get ahead of any potential problems, which is really where kind of mainstream medicine shines best, for problems that are very acute or you get in a car accident or chronic disease management oriented.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about what's your pitch to candidates? Like, why should people work at Superpower? Why is it a great place to work?
That's a great question. So this is my third company. My last company was a community of entrepreneurs, a community membership platform for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial people. Where I had the chance to spend intimate time with thousands of founders. And I think my biggest learning is that talent sits on this exponential curve, where someone who is 10 out of 10 at what they do is exponentially divergent to someone who's even like a 9 out of 10. So what that means is, like, prolific people really do exist, and that is a standard that we've set at the company. So anyone who's joining, this is a place to do your life's best work with the most talented people that you've ever come across. And it's really, really hard to build a company like this. And I think a lot of companies, they talk and they pay lip service to this, but then they don't really back it up with action. So we really have, I think, assembled, quite a talented team that I'm very humbled to be able to sit next to day to day in the trenches with. So, our head of brand and design, she was Canva's youngest PM at age 17. She started a solo agency that did $1 million in revenue all by herself, and left all that opportunity cost to join us to help us architect the Superpower brand, the visual experience, a lot of things that you see here today. We have a handful of founders on our engineering team that were all YC technical founders that we actually kind of helped them wind their company down and brought them in. And these guys are unhireable. They turned down like $1 million offers from Netflix. So I think just the talent bar that we've set is really, really ridiculous. And, Vinod Khosla always says the team you build is the company you build at the end of the day. Like, team is actually more important. There's this classic argument of product versus distribution.
Right.
I actually say neither are as important as team, which is the foundation of like who's actually going to build the product and who's actually going to build your distribution engine. So we keep the talent bar ridiculously high. The second is, I think my biggest learning across a few companies is the nature of what it means to be a mission driven, like servant leadership organization versus one that isn't. And it's generally really hard for a lot of other companies, even though, they might be building great and impactful products, to say similar, because we have a direct dotted line to the impact of people's lives. Every member that joins Superpower is going to be able to show up for a better, more meaningful way for their families if they have more energy, and we can help them solve those health problems. If we can help them prevent something like high cholesterol leading to heart disease 10, 20 years later on down the line, we're literally adding years, if not decades, to their lives. For people who get their parents on board, most people are getting their families, but we're extending the amount of time you can have with your parents, and that parents can have with their children and grandchildren. A lot of our member base is very much like a tastemaker and someone who's trying to push, big ideas forward in the world, like a lot of founders, entrepreneurs, and business executives. And every ounce of energy we're able to give them by helping them take control of their health is then translating into the way that they show up for their companies and their movement. So the ripple effect and the true quantitative dotted line to what we're doing is unlike any other potential company. We're quantifiably and qualitatively improving people's lives and improving the planet in the most powerful way, which is like increasing the source energy of humanity.
So, it's really interesting because I totally agree with the mission here. It seems very applicable to everybody in a really deep way. I'm really interested though on the first piece of like keeping that quality bar really high. You've named off like exceptional achievements of your team. But obviously you didn't start with the team, right? You had to recruit these people who would then make it easier to recruit more of these people. But like, what was the pitch to those first few people? Like, was it like, hey, this is a huge opportunity, or is it something that they wanted to work with you? What is your secret to kind of getting all these like really impressive people early on into the team before you had a bunch of other impressive people to compare against?
I think it's a few things. Genuine authenticity. Like everything I just said is truly from the heart. And this isn't like, a used carsman sales pitch, and people really pick up on that. I think, if you really are a prolific talent, you're smart, and it's not going to be easy to be sold to. So authenticity is the currency of convincing. I think number one, and then number two is the culture that we've created, and one piece of the culture obviously is keeping the talent bar high, but it's more so the intentionality behind which we built the culture. So I think another learning from prior companies is like, if you're not intentional enough about your culture, the company isn't going to run as well. So that's something we really made before we even built the team, was what are the cultural principles that we want to stand for, and what is going to kind of be the guiding force and the rules internally that help us make smarter decisions. So, and then we pitched to folks joining that, like, the culture is written in pencil. So as you join the organization and as we start to make an impact together, you're able to come and bring in the things that you notice to make changes. Like the culture doc is a notion that everyone has edit access to. So I think people really appreciate the fact that they can, be both the player and the coach, or, also help kind of write the ideologies and the guardrails in addition to following them. So.
Can you talk to me about the culture a little bit? Like, what are the maybe 1 to 2 things that are really kind of the top of the priority stack here?
Yeah, there's a few that come to mind. One is mission obsession. So that's the number one guiding force. Like everyone who joins the company, that's the number one filter criteria. It's like, are you mission obsessed? Like, do you just really care about this? Do you wake up every day and want to build something that's going to help people? Like, do you live, breathe, eat, sleep the ethos? Everyone on the team really takes care of their health, prioritizes their health, and makes it the bedrock of their life and their work. So mission obsession is number one, and it comes through in the product experience, and it comes through in everything from the customer support interactions all the way through to a design choice in the product, if we're really mission obsessed and customer obsessed. Second is superpowering your health. So again, kind of related to mission obsession, but we all really do try to put personal health first, and that's actually a strategic business decision. So we believe that health is not just something to check the box on. It's really a tool for human performance and a tool for quantifiable, it's a tool to quantifiably win on productivity.
Yeah.
And then number 3 is one that I personally like, which is focus on the A+ task. Not all time and things you could do with your time are created equal. So we're obsessed, literally obsessed with working on the highest leverage opportunities, the most like needle moving projects and tasks. And we're constantly asking ourselves like, hey, I see you working on something. Is that an A+ task? And not being afraid to call that out to make sure that we're all spending our time on the things that are really going to push the business forward. Otherwise, it's super easy to like, work 12, 13, 14-hour days and feel like you're doing a lot. But then you look back in your calendar and it's really mainly busy work instead of things that materially push the business forward. And people
Can we
really
dive into that? I would love to understand how you guys do that. Like tactically, if I was a company and I wanted to like really focus on this idea of A+ tasks, like what are you guys doing to make it work?
Yeah, it's questioning everything.
Okay.
So everything that we're doing hour by hour that's on our plate, we have kind of corralled ourselves to ask, is this an A+ task? And we've created a culture and environment where others aren't afraid to challenge one another if something is an A+ task. And we obviously have our higher level organizational objectives, right, which is growth and hitting certain product features and milestones. And then we make sure our tasks in the micro roll up to those bigger objectives. So I really think the key takeaway though is creating a culture where people are not afraid to challenge one another to be working on the right things, because it's hard when the demands of everything are coming in and it's a deluge. It's really easy to just check the box with the busy work, and it's hard to sit down, find 2 to 3 hours to carve out brain space for deep work on something that's a really tricky A+ problem.
Are there examples where maybe your team has pushed back on you on like, hey, maybe you're not doing the A+ task, or you've had to push back onto your team?
All the time, actually, which is great. Like, you want a culture where your team is not afraid to tell the CEO or one of the founders, hey, Jacob, I don't think you're working on the right things. And I'm humbled and grateful that that's a thing. And, no one's afraid to bring these things up. So it actually happens more often than you think, especially just, given kind of the more public nature of our brand and the inflection point we're starting to hit. I've actually never been this overwhelmed with just like inbound on all channels, from WhatsApp, Slack to Twitter DM to email. I have hundreds of unread emails still that I need to clear out, that kind of keep creeping up week to week. So yeah, it's really helpful to have a team that has your back.
So I saw on your website, like one of your values was also this idea of like working hard, but making sure that you're taking care of your personal health as part of that. Can you kind of paint me a picture of like what that ends up looking like internally? So is that like making sure that you're getting the right amount of sleep and working out and eating well and not kind of putting work in front of that? Or like, how does that kind of show up in day to day?
Yeah, so we have a shared Slack channel where people are sharing things like their Oura Ring scores and sharing their health stacks and different things that they're trying, experiments that they're running. So obviously, because the cool thing about our company is we do a lot of health testing as part of the product experience. So there's a feedback loop. So one of our teammates just shared how their testosterone has increased by them making a handful of changes to their supplement stack and their sleep regimen. And it's really powerful to see that feedback loop in real time. Yeah, we have a Slack channel that's pretty vibrant where people are sharing a lot of these things. And we have the health platform to track it, obviously. And we've just now started to expand into working with teams and companies. So
that's cool.
other companies, can get their teams on Superpower to do the same.
Nice. And we had a Slack channel where we compare Oura Rings and scores, and I apparently just have shitty sleep. So maybe you can talk to me afterwards about things that I can do better here. Talk to me a little bit about how, I'm really interested when it comes to this idea of A+ task, but just in general, how projects go from kind of idea to like in production code. Like, talk to me a little bit about that process and what it looks like at Superpower.
It's a really great question. So there's 3 things we do to make this process most effective and maximize our shipping velocity. Number 1 is documentation. So we have a core nucleus in San Francisco, but some of our team is distributed. So we're sort of documenting by necessity, but we over document, and we're always outlining everything in a written first format. And just like Amazon, so my co-founder and CTO hailed from AWS in a prior lifetime. So we've adopted the Bezosian one meeting, box of pizza style, less than 8 people. Everyone reads the document and memo asynchronously before the meeting so that we can have the most effective product discussions. So there's a lot of documentation and a lot of review on the first 10-15 minutes of a Zoom call anytime we're looking to make a product decision on a canonical document that someone had written. It makes for much better decisions because writing is a forcing function for clarity of thought. And then having that forum for multiple people who are going to be involved in a decision to have the ability to Notion comment back and forth on different aspects of it, it's like way faster and higher fidelity than if it was just a free-for-all conversation. So that's number one, is like documentation and our sort of memo review process when we're getting something shipped and ready. Second is we are a product engineering driven culture. So we don't have any PMs on the team. All of our engineers and our technical co-founder and CTO, Kevin, they basically are the PMs in the sense. And the reason for that is we want to collapse the talent stack and have it so that the people who are building the thing are also the ones designing, scoping, specking, and kind of ideating on the thing. And it just means you have less cooks in the kitchen and you're able to move a lot faster. And then the third point actually is, something we do, which is optimizing for people who are full stack humans in our hiring process, which helps us ship faster. So Hannah, our head of design, as an example, she does everything from marketing strategy to copywriting to product design to brand design to landing page design to Webflow implementation to the tiniest little pixel, of the front end code, like full stack human. And anytime you have people who are able to work across everything from like the highest level bird's eye view all the way down to like the minuscule implementation detail, you're going to get a better output and a better result because it has to pass through less brains in order to be brought to life. So that's a little bit of behind the scenes into our product building process and how we think and work.
So can you paint me so really interesting to hear about your head of design and this idea of full stack human. Can you paint me a picture of like what your team looks like right now, kind of who works there, and like a little bit about, where they're located and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So two co-founders, Kevin and Max. Kevin started a Y Combinator company in a prior life and exited and also sold a bootstrap SaaS company in a prior life. He's been programming for 20 years. Interestingly, he actually got into Y Combinator originally on an idea that was seeking to build AGI, so a precursor to large language models and browser agents. And they told him he was crazy and he should pivot to dev tools. So he was about 5 years too early. But now that there's increasingly more and more AI that we're building into as an AI driven healthcare company, Kevin's expertise there is very important. And then my co-founder, Max, who came from the finance world, has a big strategic finance background, spent some time at Goldman, but also started a handful of prior healthcare businesses. He's also a designer by background. So he, right out of college, was the first hire at a startup that went from 0 to 20 million users in a very short period of time. And he was leading design. So we kind of have a trio of skill sets across brand, design, product, go-to-market, and engineering on the core co-founding trio. And then we have Dr. Anant, who works with us. So Dr. Anant is one of our medical directors, and he is Stanford, Harvard, MD, MBA, and founding team at a digital health unicorn, Verta Health, and was also the chief medical officer at Modern Age. And he's also a concierge physician to some of these top 1%, high net worth individuals across the world. So there's a lot of learnings that we pull from his brain into how we build the clinical model and the product. And then, we have a really amazing engineering team that, otherwise has really high opportunity costs. So we want to build a top engineering org in an industry that isn't necessarily the most sexy to build in, right? Like the best engineers are often drawn towards really hard technical problems and, dev tools and SaaS. But we think that there's an opportunity to set a new standard for what it means to be, an amazing engineering minded human working for a human driven cause.
Awesome. And you've, like you mentioned, you've been an entrepreneur, you've started companies. This is kind of, what have you learned from these like past experiences that you're bringing now to Superpower? Maybe one or two things that maybe you're doing differently, or it took you a little longer to actually put into process.
That's a good question. Mission-driven companies outperform. Mission-driven companies outperform. It's a different well of energy that you can draw from. It's a much exponentially more powerful fuel source that the team can rally behind on a day-to-day basis that you can use to attract the best people who really want to work for something that has a direct impact in the world. And I think it also gets investors and partners excited. I've never seen across 3 different companies. I've raised hundreds of millions, over $100 million of venture capital across a few businesses and started my own venture fund. So I've sat on the other side of the table. Yeah. And I've never seen such fervent investor, customer, partner, consumer, or teammate interest in a business before, relative to my other experiences. It's excellent. And I really think the big pinnacle reason for that is the fact that we are such a mission-driven company. And when we launched a manifesto. We didn't just launch, a website. We launched superpower.com/manifesto, and we explained how healthcare was broken and how it needs a new hero.
Yeah.
And we want to fill that space. And just the comments and the stories and the things that were shared when we launched that was overwhelming. We saved a Notion document of like 100 different people who were all sharing their stories of how healthcare has failed them in various ways. And I think we've really struck a chord in the market across all different types of things. So I think the big takeaway is that mission-driven companies are special, and when you find one, find a way to become a part of it, support it, and it's what the world needs. We don't
That's
just
awesome.
unhinged capitalism. We need companies that care about shareholders and stakeholders.
That's great. Well, I think that's a great place to stop. Thank you so much, Jacob. This has been really interesting. As I was telling you before the call, I've been using Superpower, and it showed me some health issues that I need to work on. So thanks for the product. I think it's awesome.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to Why Work Here. Ready to find your next role or discover top talent? Visit us at wellfound.com.